Hey friends, it's Robin. Welcome back to my channel. So in my last video, I did a bunch of steamy back to school recommendations. However, I have a ton of other books set at school that aren't romance. And so I decided to do another video where I talk about books set at school that aren't romance based. So I have some that are YA, I have some that are thrillers, some that are horror, some that are paranormal, some that are a mix of all of those things. And it's just a big range of different books, everything from middle grade to adult. So there should hopefully be something for everybody here. Lately, I keep messing up the number of books that are in the video. I have 12 books to talk about today. I think it's actually 12, but without further rambling, let's get right into the recommendations. So first up is one that is a little divisive, and that is I Kissed a Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. First of all, this edition is absolutely stunning, but I know that this book didn't work for everyone. I thought this was an adorable YA queer contemporary. This is set in high school. We're following four main characters. Shara is kind of like the it girl at school, and she suddenly goes missing after a school dance, and no one knows where she is, but our other three characters receive these little letters from her giving them clues as to where she is, and they kind of have to come together and figure out what happened to Shara Wheeler. And they are kind of like three very different people. One of the characters is Shara's jock boyfriend. He is on the football team. We have the bad boy outcast, who is Shara's neighbor. And then we have our other heroine, who is kind of like the smartest girl in school, and her and Shara shared a kiss on an elevator. And it is the three of them working together to figure out what happened to Shara. There are people discovering their sexualities. There are a lot of discussions about being a queer in a town that is very anti-queer, and I think there are a lot of amazing discussions happening in this book. It is all set at school. It is all leading up to their graduation, and I just had a really good time with this book. Next, we have the Grimrose Girls by Laura Pohl, and this is a kind of retelling fantasy-esque story set at a boarding school, and we are following our four girls who are all based off of fairy tale princesses, and it is them discovering that one of their best friends drowned over the summer, and none of them believe that it was a suicide because the girl that drowned is a like varsity swimmer, and they think something more sinister happened. They are slowly learning that girls have been mysteriously dying at this boarding school for generations, and it is them kind of coming together and trying to figure out what happened to their best friend, if they're next, and how to stop the cycle. I had a really good time with this. The characters in here are amazing. There is so much representation in this book. It feels kind of like a contemporary fantasy. Like this could be set in the real world, but with fantastical elements to it. So definitely recommend this one if you are looking for a great queer cast of characters set at school. After that, we have She Drives Me Crazy by Kelley Quindlan. I have not seen this book like anywhere. This is another YA contemporary story. It is a female-female romance between two characters. One is on the cheerleading squad and the other is a basketball player, and it is them fake dating. And this is just a really cute, good time. It is the two of them who kind of get pushed together because they are in a car accident, like a fender bender in their high school parking lot, and their moms decide that they now need to carpool together to school, and they decide to fake date for reasons. It is them slowly like opening up to each other and learning their biases towards the other, because one is a basketball star and the other's a cheerleader, and they have certain ideas about that type of person. And so it is them getting to know each other and falling for each other, and it is very sweet and cute. Very different from that, we have the Mary Shelley Club by Goldy Moldavsky, and this is not cute contemporary YA. This is a teen slasher, so if you love classic like 90s teen slashers, definitely give this one a read. Even if you're an adult, there are a lot of references to 90s teen slashers in here. It was a really good time going through and seeing all of those little references. We are following a girl who right at the beginning of the book ends up surviving like a home invasion, and because of that she ends up transferring schools. She is dealing with some PTSD and she transfers schools, and at this new school there is the Mary Shelley Club, and it is this group of high school kids who are all obsessed with horror movies, like classic horror, and they get together and they watch these movies, and there is a little trial that they all have to go through every single year, and it is them playing one big prank on everyone. And the prank ends when the first person screams, and they are timed for how long it takes, and they end up with a winner at the end. It is them going into this club and how things slowly devolve. This is such a good time. Like I said, if you are a horror fan in any way, definitely give this one a read. Then we have Bunny by Mona Awad, and this is a very polarizing book, but I loved this. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I know that this is kind of a booktube darling, and then a lot of non-booktubers end up hating it. We're sorry, but this book is so weird. This is definitely one of the weirdest books I've ever read. You are going to read this book and the entire time is like some sort of lucid fever dream, but it is worth it. You are following this character who is going to this really prestigious school for a literature degree. She is obsessed with this group of girls who she calls the bunnies. And the bunnies are very like Valley Girl-esque. They are very loving and preppy and beautiful, and they are always complimenting each other and building each other up. And she hates these girls, except that she ends up getting pulled into their orbit and weird things happen. That's all I can say. This book is weird. If you need a plot to your story, do not read this. If you don't need a plot and you just want to feel certain ways, definitely give this one a read. I recommend the audiobook. The audiobook is absolutely fantastic, especially during like the hive mind sections, because all of these girls start to develop like a hive mind, and it is so creepy and unsettling. So definitely check out the audiobook if you are an audiobook listener. Next is Legendborn by Tracey Deonn. This is a YA fantasy, and this one is set, is it at North Carolina? I believe it's Chapel Hill. And our heroine is in high school, but she ends up being invited to this program for like an early college admission. And so she goes to this university, and there she discovers magic, and she's kind of pulled into this secret society. It's based off of Arthurian legends. There is a little romance in here. There's a lot of queer characters. This book is very long, and I know that a lot of people ended up being disappointed in this because it got so hyped, but the last like quarter of this book made this such an easy 5-star for me. It is so twisty and turny and action-packed. There are some beautiful discussions in here about history and family. Definitely recommend this one. If by some miracle you have not read this yet, the sequel comes out really soon, so definitely one to check out if you are a fantasy reader. Then we have Foulless Fair by Hannah Capin, and this is another one that I have seen very few people talk about, and it is one that is not going to be for everyone. This is written in a very strange way, and this is also slightly hive mind-esque. So we are following these, I think it's 4 best friends, and right at the beginning of the book, you discover that one of our heroines was sexually assaulted, and she goes to her best friends and decides that they are going to get revenge on the men that hurt her. It is them going to this school, this really like exclusive school, coming up with some fake identities, forcing their way into this crowd, and then taking everybody out. And it is so unsettling and weird. This is Shakespearean inspired, and so if you are into Shakespeare, into Macbeth, you are going to love this one. Like I said, it is very strangely written, and because of that, it is not going to work for everyone. But if you are all about the like good for her type of revenge story, definitely add this one to your list. After that, we have The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. This is a book that I recommend all the time because I am obsessed with it. This is one of my favorite thrillers of all time. This is not entirely set at school, but this is told in a dual timeline. So in the present day, we are following our heroine whose sister was killed a few years ago, and she is obsessed with figuring out what happened to her sister. And her sister was killed right outside of this abandoned boarding school. And then we flash to the past where we learn about this boarding school. Is an all-girls boarding school that is haunted. Simone St. James always plays with slightly paranormal thrillers, and that is one of my favorite things in books in general, is slightly paranormal mystery thrillers. and she does it so, so well to where her thrillers feel so realistic and there is just a slightly paranormal, magical element to it. And this one is fantastic. I love the friendship in here. I love the ending. It is so well done, so well crafted. Another very polarizing one. People are going to probably hate me for recommending this. This has one of the lowest Goodreads reading I've ever seen. But that is Catherine House by Elisabeth Thomas. I know that this was a Literally Dead book club pick last year, which is actually why I read it, and everyone hated it. But I actually really liked this. I think I gave it 3.5, 4 stars. I listened to this on audio, and I could not stop listening to this book. This is another book that has no plot. Like, there is no purpose to this book, so know that right now. This book has no plot, there's no ending, there's no point to this story. You're gonna finish this and go, what was the purpose of those pages? There is none. This book is set at the prestigious Catherine House, and we were following our heroine who was invited to the school. And at this school, they pump out people who are big politicians and the CEOs of company and major influencers. Once you go to this school, you are pretty much guaranteed to be anything that you want. And so our heroine goes here, and our heroine doesn't understand why she got invited here. She's kind of a nobody, and it is her at the school, and weird, creepy things happen at the school, and she's trying to figure out what those weird, creepy things are. It is so trippy. You are going to go through this whole book, and the entire time, all you are going to think is, what am I reading, and what is happening? And then it ends. Next, we have one middle grade book. I do not read middle grade at all, but I will make an exception for Katherine Arden, and that is the Small Spaces series. This is obviously in a school setting, but in this one, the class is on a field trip to this farm, and when they get to this farm, our heroine and she makes these two friends, and they discover that everyone in their class has been turned into scarecrows. And they need to take on this evil scarecrow and try to save their classmates, turn them back into people, and it is super creepy and ominous. I just want everyone to read this because it's super fun and creepy and dark, and it is like for people who want to participate in the spooky season but are like, I'm easily spooked, like me. Definitely give this one a read. It's a super good time. It has all of the creepy vibes, but it's middle grade. All of these books I feel like are really polarizing, and the last two that I have fit that bill as well. So we have A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. This book was very, very hyped, and it was kind of pitched a certain way, and that's not entirely what it ended up being, and I know a lot of people didn't end up liking it because of that. This is another book that is minimal on the plot, high on the vibes, and so this is following this prestigious boarding school, and our heroine is returning to the school for her final year after a very tragic event and needing to take a year off. She is now going back there to finish up her final year, and everybody that she knew at this school has since graduated, and so she feels kind of like an outsider even though she's returning to the place that she's been for many years. And when she returns to this school, she moves back in to the house, and there are 3 new girls living in that house with her that she doesn't know. And it is her and this new girl kind of becoming obsessed with each other, and they are investigating if there were possibly witches at this school at one point. And it is very dark academia. It is very ominous. It is kind of all about these parasocial relationships and becoming obsessed with each other. There is a slight thrillery feel in here. I know this was pitched as being very witchy. It's not very witchy. The witches are just kind of a catalyst for some things, but I really liked the writing in here. I really liked the dark academia gothic vibes of the whole thing. This has a lot of creepy elements because they are kind of very isolated. It's a really good time. If you like dark academia, go into this thinking of it as dark academia and not witchy. And then lastly is a book that I personally love, but I know a lot of booktubers have hated, and that is Summer Sons by Lee Mandelo. I give this one 4.5 stars. This is another one of my favorite horrors of all time. This is following our hero whose best friend left I think it was like a year ago, to go to university, and he was supposed to follow him. His best friend kept telling him to wait to come down, and suddenly his best friend dies, and everyone thinks that it was a suicide, and now our hero is going down to that university, moving into his best friend's house, and trying to figure out what happened to his best friend. The way I always pitch this is if it was the Dream Thieves, but with more cars and super adult. So that is the vibe of this. It is essentially Ronin turned all the way up with a lot of drugs, smoking, and cars. It is very dark. It is slightly paranormal. Our hero keeps seeing ghosts, especially the ghost of his best friend. He is trying to solve the mystery of what happened to his best friend, of what he was investigating, and what happened to him, whether or not he killed himself, or if something more sinister happened. It is also him figuring out his sexuality and his identity. It is perfection in my mind. I think the writing in here is pretentious in the best way. And I loved this. I will read everything that Lee Mandelo writes from here on out. And so if you really like Southern Gothic, mildly paranormal books, all right, that is it for my back to school recommendations for this year. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know if you liked them, if you hated them. I would love to hear your opinions, and I will catch y'all in my next video. Bye.